Some people are important, others just take up space, right, Mama? That's what my son Marcus said. My son lifted his glass in front of everyone, smiled, and dropped those words as if they were part of the toast, as if I wasn't sitting right there at the end of the long dining table, watching everyone laugh. It was his birthday, 42 years old. The house was packed. There was soft jazz playing in the background, red wine, plates covered with leftover food, and warm lights that made everything look perfect. Marcus stood tall in that pristine white shirt that probably cost more than $200, his watch gleaming on his wrist, and his wife Chloe standing beside him with that smile that never truly included me. I was sitting at the very end of the table, literally where they used to pile the empty serving dishes or the used napkins. No one had asked me where I wanted to sit. No one said a thing when I settled there because I already knew it was my place. Now my son cleared his throat. Everyone hushed. He raised his glass higher and repeated, looking directly at me. Because let's be honest, some people are important. Others just take up space. And then they all laughed. It wasn't an awkward laugh. It was a real shared laugh. As if everyone had been waiting for that moment. As if they all knew exactly who he was talking about. Chloe covered her mouth, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. The cousins nodded. Aunt Vivian lowered her gaze, but she smiled, too. I didn't move. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even drop my gaze. I just stayed there with the wine glass in my hand, feeling the silence in my own throat way heavier than any comeback I could possibly deliver. I felt the heat rising up my neck, not from shame, but from rage. A cold, controlled rage. The kind that burns you inside but doesn't make you tremble. The kind that teaches you to wait for the exact moment. Marcus continued speaking. You got to be real, right? There are people who add to the equation and there are people who, well, you know. He shrugged. Everyone laughed again. Someone said, cheers, and glasses clinked. I stayed motionless, looking at him, remembering. I remembered when he was 5 years old and crying in the middle of the night with a fever. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up putting cold compresses on his forehead, singing softly until he calmed down. We didn't have money for a doctor. We barely had enough to eat, but I was there. I remembered when he was 12 and got jumped at school. He came home with a black eye, his shirt ripped, crying with humiliation and anger. I held him. I told him he was strong, that he would get ahead, that it didn't matter what anyone else said and that I would always have his back. I remembered when he was 17 and wanted to go to college. We had no money. I worked double shifts for 2 years to pay for his classes. I sold the jewelry my mother had left me. I sold furniture. I sold everything of value I owned except my dignity. That I saved until today. And now he was standing there in his $200 shirt, his watch worth more than 6 months' rent in his huge house that I helped pay for with the first $1,000 I saved cleaning other people's homes, telling me in front of everyone that I just took up space. The laughter continued. Someone told a joke. Someone else asked for more wine. The music turned up a notch and I stayed there at the end of the table, invisible but present, silent but wide awake. Then, I took a deep breath. I placed my glass on the table. I stood up slowly without making a sound, but everyone noticed. The laughter faded. Conversations stopped. Marcus looked at me, still smiling, but now with a flicker of surprise, as if he hadn't expected me to do anything at all. I spoke calmly without shouting, without shaking. It's good that you mentioned that, Marcus, because you're right. Some people are important and others just take up space. He looked confused. Everyone was staring at me. No one moved. I continued. It's a good thing I just bought my own house 2000 mi from here. I've signed, I've paid, and I already have the keys. The silence changed. It was no longer the silence of shared laughter. It was the silence of shock, confusion, and fear. Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Chloe stopped smiling. The cousins looked at each other. Aunt Vivian looked up. Don't worry, Marcus, I said. You won't ever have to put up with me taking up space in your life again. I'm leaving and this time it's for good. I grabbed my purse, turned around, and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one said anything. I only heard the sound of my own footsteps on the hardwood floor and then the sound of the door closing behind me. It was cold outside, but I didn't feel a thing. Just relief, just clarity, just the certainty that I had finally done what I should have done years ago. I got into the car, started the engine, and as I drove down those streets I knew by heart, the same streets where I raised the boy who now despised me, I realized something. I hadn't just taken up space. I had built the very space where he now lived, and it was time to build my own. I drove for 20 minutes aimlessly. The streets were empty. It was late. The light from the street lamps illuminated the pavement. Still slick from the last rain. My hands were trembling on the wheel, not from fear, but from release, like letting go of something you've been carrying for so long that you no longer remember how it feels to live without the weight. I stopped in front of a park, the same park where I used to take Marcus when he was a kid, where I taught him to ride his bike, where he fell and scraped his knees, and I wiped away his tears, telling him that the pain would pass. But the courage to try again was what mattered. I turned off the engine. I stayed there in silence, watching the empty swing swaying in the wind. And then I cried, not from sadness, but from rage. From helplessness, from years accumulated of making myself small so others could feel big. From years of saying yes when I wanted to say no, from years of swallowing my words so as not to ruin the peace of a family that never gave me any peace. I cried all the tears I hadn't shed at that table. All the tears I hadn't shed when I sat at the end like an unwelcome guest in my own son's life. All the tears I hadn't shed when I heard that shared laughter. That laughter that erased me. But after the crying, something else came. Clarity. The same clarity I'd had 3 months ago when I made the most important decision of my life. The decision no one knew about. The decision I had just revealed at that table that changed everything in a second. Because I hadn't spoken on impulse. I hadn't said that because I was hurt and wanted to wound him back. I said it because it was true. 3 months ago, I started quietly planning my exit without telling anyone, without asking permission. 3 months ago, I received a call. It was Zilla, my distant cousin, the one who lives in a small coastal town in South Carolina, 2,000 meters from the city that no longer felt like mine. She told me a neighbor was selling her house, a small two-bedroom home with a front yard and a porch where you could watch the sunset. She sent me photos. I looked at those photos for hours. The house wasn't luxurious. It didn't have marble floors or huge windows like Marcus' house, but it had something I hadn't had in years. Peace, silence, space that was mine and no one else's. I asked her the price. She said the owner was asking $60,000. I had $42,000 saved. I had been saving for years, putting away every bill I could, every tip, every extra dollar I earned, selling sweet potato pies on the weekends, doing alterations for neighbors, jobs Marcus never knew about because he never asked what I did with my time. I told Hila I needed to think, but I really didn't need to. I had already decided. I just needed to gather the rest of the money. I sold the gold ring my mother gave me before she died. I sold the antique china I inherited from my grandmother. I sold old furniture I had stored in the back room of Marcus' house. The room where I slept. The room that was more of a storage unit than a bedroom. No one asked. No one noticed because to them I was invisible. And for the first time in my life that invisibility worked in my favor. In 2 months, I raised the $60,000. I called Ila and told her I wanted the house. She spoke with the owner. We signed papers. I did everything online in silence at night when everyone was asleep, sitting at the kitchen table with the light off so no one would ask what I was doing. A week ago, I received the keys in the mail. I hid them in my purse. I touched them every day just to remind myself they were real, that it wasn't a dream, that I had a place to go. And today, when Marcus said what he said, when he humiliated me in front of everyone, when he confirmed what I already knew, that to him I wasn't his mother, but a problem, a burden, something that took up space. I knew the time had come to speak, not out of revenge, but out of truth. I dried my tears and started the car again. I wasn't going back to that house. Not tonight. Maybe never again. I drove to a small hotel downtown, a simple, clean place where no one knew me. I paid for one night, went up to the room, sat on the bed, and looked at my phone. I had 12 missed calls, all from Marcus. 3 messages from Chloe, 1 from Aunt Vivian. None of them said sorry. They all said, we need to talk, or this is a misunderstanding, or you can't just leave like that. I turned off the phone, lay down, and for the first time in years, I slept without feeling like I owed anyone anything. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was streaming through the window. I showered, got dressed, and went down for breakfast. The coffee was hot, the bread was fresh, and I was alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I turned on the phone. More calls, more messages. This time, even the cousins had written. Everyone wanted to know if it was true. If I was really leaving, if I had actually bought a house, if I was really going to abandon them. I only replied to one message. Lailas. I told her, I'll be there in 3 days. Thank you for everything. Then I deleted the rest. I didn't block anyone. I just didn't respond because I didn't owe them explanations. I didn't owe them my time. I didn't owe them anything. I spent that day organizing my things. I didn't have much. My entire life fit into 4 boxes. Clothes, a few books, old photos I didn't look at anymore but couldn't throw away, a woven blanket I'm a furniturago, and my grandmother's cross. That was all. I didn't have furniture. Because the furniture was Marcus. I didn't have plates because the plates were from his house. I had nothing that was truly mine except those 4 boxes and the $60,000 I used to buy my freedom. I hired a small moving company. I told them to come the next day. I gave them the hotel address. I explained that it was only 4 boxes. The man looked at me strangely but didn't ask. He just said, "Understood, ma'am. 8 a.m. tomorrow." That night, I slept in the hotel again. I turned off the phone again. I felt that strange peace again. That peace that hurts a little because you're leaving a whole life behind, but which also relieves you because you know that life was no longer yours. I thought about Marcus, the child he was, the man he became, and I wondered at what point I lost one and gained the other. At what point love turned into dependence? At what point my sacrifice became my prison? I didn't find answers. I only found more questions. But it didn't matter anymore because I had already made the decision. And this time, no one was going to stop me. The next morning, as the sun was just coming up, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper. It was the feeling of closing a door that had been open for 67 years. The door to a life I built with my hands, my back, and my silence. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and looked out the window. The city was waking up. People walking to their jobs, cars, normal life, life that went on no matter what was happening inside me. I thought about that table, the table where they seated me at the end. I thought about the laughter, about Marcus' eyes when he said Thosnithing. There was no doubt in his gaze, no guilt, only certainty. The certainty of someone who knows they can say whatever they want because the other person won't do anything about it. But he was wrong. I got up, dressed slowly. Every movement was conscious. Every garment I put on was a decision. It wasn't just clothes. It was armor. It was preparation for what was coming. I went down to the hotel restaurant. I ordered black coffee and 2 slices of toast. The waitress was young, maybe 20, with her hair in a ponytail and a tired smile. She asked if I was visiting the city. I told her no, that I was leaving forever. She smiled wider and said, "How brave." I didn't know if she meant it or just said it out of courtesy, but I kept those words. How brave. Was it brave or was it cowardly? Was it brave to leave or would it have been braver to stay and fight? I didn't know. I only knew that I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. That every day I spent there made me smaller. That if I stayed one more year, I would disappear completely. I finished my breakfast and went back to the room. At exactly 8 a.m., the moving truck arrived. 2 young, polite men loaded my 4 boxes as if they were made of crystal, even though they were just old cardboard and things worthless to anyone but me. I gave them the address of my new house, 2000 mi away. They told me it would take 4 days to arrive. I paid them half up front, $1,200. It hurt to spend that money, but it was necessary. I couldn't carry the boxes with me on the bus. Yes, a bus. Because I didn't have a car. The car I drove that night was Marcus. Everything was Marcus. The house, the furniture, the car. Even the plate I ate from was his. I had nothing. And yet I now had everything. I had a house that was mine. I had keys that only I could use. I had a future that no one else was going to control. I went to the bus terminal. I bought a ticket for the next day, $530. A 2-day trip with one stop in the middle. I didn't care.